Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. All right, time for another edition. We released this on Thursday night in the YouTube channel or Friday on the podcast Sharp or Square. Chad Millman, co-host of The Favorites, all of our odds provided by DraftKings. So last week, a lot of favorites were in favor for me and didn't necessarily do well. I'm still surprised how the Rams played perhaps the most flawless half to game of offensive football by any team on the season. I was just watching some clips of it today, and they did everything right. Nobody dropped a pass. Ball never hit the turf. No holding. It was a thing of art. And it's interesting because now this week you get the Bills getting 2.5 at the Lions. And I like the Bills here because they're getting Kincaid, the tight end, is healthy. They're getting Coleman back. It was almost as if it was this sandwich game, even though it's McVay and Stafford. You know, Buffalo travels west. They know half the stadium's going to be theirs. They're looking at that Detroit game, even though it's not an AFC or a divisional game. And they had a couple of guys on the cusp that could play or not, and they elected not, and they got caught flat-footed when the Rams played a flawless game. So I like Buffalo plus 2.5 now, sharp or square.
Well, the line has moved from 1.5 Detroit to 2.5 Detroit. And I will tell you that the majority of betting tickets have been coming in on the Buffalo Bills. So when you see a line move that goes in the direction of one side that is opposite of where the betting tickets are, that's a reverse line move. And that tells you the professional bettors are on the Lions. And they've been on the Lions at 1.5 and 2. At 2.5, you start to see the pressure point. You'll find an equal number who still like the Lions at 2.5, and they take it up to 3. And you'll find the number of wise guys who are coming in at 2.5 on the Bills and liking the Bills because they like Josh Allen. I will tell you, I'm a Lions backer in this game. I bet it at 1.5. I bet it at 2. As healthy as the Bills are starting to get with players coming back, this may be the healthiest the Lions have been in 8 weeks. They could get a lot of guys back on the defensive line that has just been decimated over the past 3 to 4 weeks. Also, the Lions haven't played on the road since November 24th at the Colts. They haven't played, period, for 10 days. You talk about the Bills, they just had a gauntlet, right? They had the Chiefs. They had the Niners. Those were massive games for them, getting over huge humps. They go on the road, have an intense, nearly perfect game that just isn't perfect enough against the Rams. Now they got to go on the road again against what might be the best team in the NFL, and they could face them in the Super Bowl. So, you know, you're not wrong by betting the Bills at 2.5. But if you said I like the Lions, you'd be on the sharp side too. It's a pretty even split at this number, just at this number.
Okay, Steelers getting 5.5 at the Eagles. And the reason I like this is because Pittsburgh's mostly been a pretty good team against the run. If you look at what the Eagles have decided to do since the bye, it is throw the ball less. Green Bay's doing this too. They are a run-first team, as they should be. Their best player is Saquon. Their second best player is A.J. Brown. I think Pittsburgh can have some vulnerabilities against the pass. But I don't think Jalen Hurts from the pocket. A.J. Brown's not happy. He's only getting 6.5 targets. Mike Tomlin is the best underdog coach in the league. 4.5 points. These two don't play very often. It feels like a lot of points to a very good roster. Even if Pittsburgh lost, if Pickens plays, they have enough big play ability to backdoor cover. The line seems out of whack. I'll take the Steelers sharp or square.
It's sharp. And this is what we talked about on the Favorites podcast was, why isn't this number 3? Why isn't this number 3.5? When the number is so out of whack, you either are being asked to do something that is too easy, which the books never do, or you feel like you're missing something. I don't know what we're missing here. Like you just mentioned, Tomlin is the best underdog coach in the league. Tomlin is the best underdog coach in a generation. let's put this in perspective. You win 53% of your bets, you're an incredible sports bettor, right? That's what you're looking for. So when we talk about trends and we talk about analytics on certain opportunities and metrics in betting, if we can find a trend that is 56% against the spread over an historically relevant period of time, you tend to want to play that if all the other factors are in your direction. Tomlin, he's 60+% in just about every category as an underdog. You say, all right, between 3 and 7, two key numbers, 67%. You say on the road as a dog, 64%. Like, you can't name a category where he's not 60+%. And then if you look at the matchup too, you mentioned Saquon, right? The Eagles are the only team in the NFL that is running the ball at a higher percentage than they're passing the ball. And I would not think, oh my God, Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, there's, strife, and now they're getting along again. Doesn't mean that Kellen Moore is going to change this offense and all of a sudden try to make it so AJ Brown is getting more and more touches. This is who they are. Jalen Hurts has thrown the fewest passes in the NFL this year. So I would expect a low-scoring game. Wise guys are expecting a low-scoring game. That plays to the advantage of the team that is more than a field goal underdog. So yeah, that's the sharp side.
I like the Broncos -4, both teams off a bye. I think Denver's got a really good defense. Now, again, Jameis Winston, I think you can beat it down the field. That's not really what the Colts do. I think there are ways to score on virtually every team in this league, and I think Cleveland is one of those weird, bad teams that can be highly productive throwing the ball down the field. But it should be noted in that game, Denver eventually got pick sixes and turned the game around with their defense. I think Anthony Richardson is struggling with Shane Steichen. Look what Shane Steichen did with Gardner Minshew. Okay? Shane Steichen, as a rookie with Justin Herbert, set records, made Jalen Hurts an MVP level player, and he's pretty average from the pocket. That passing game is limited, and I think it's limited because Anthony Richardson may not be a pro starting quarterback. I get an experienced coach, an excellent defense at home against a dome team. I love the number 4. It's probably square, but I like Denver here. Give me Sean Payton, Shanahan, McVay, Reed, extra time, sharper
Yeah,
square.
you know the answer. It's totally square. Wise guys love the Colts here. It's been bet down. It was at 4.5. It's at 4. It'll probably go down to 3.5. If you want to bet the Colts, get it now because it's only going to go in their direction. You're right about the Broncos coming off a bye, and there is a lot of public sentiment on the Broncos right now. The last time anyone saw them, they were winning in dramatic fashion against the Browns, right? They were getting 2 pick sixes. They were covering with a miracle and an interception in the end zone. The Broncos are covering by 5 points per game. Historically, teams that are covering by 5 points per game over the course of the season, once we get past week 5, only covered about a 44% clip against the spread. So there's one trend to help the cause of the Colts. But also, I don't know that wise guys agree with you about Anthony Richardson. I think there's a little bit of Bryce Young sort of in the way he's come back from being benched since he's come back. 8th rated passer, according to Pro Football Focus. 4th in big plays, according to Pro Football Focus. Big play throws, according to Pro Football Focus. So it's not as bad as you would think. And I do think there's something key here. Remember what happened with the Browns against the Broncos in that primetime game. They didn't have Riley Moss at cornerback. They had William Vance. William Vance, he might still be giving up touchdowns to Jerry Jeudy as we speak. Like, he was getting torched in that game. Riley Moss is the only guy who didn't practice this week for the Broncos. So if he's not playing, I think that's a severely diminished defense, and it impacts what they can do all across the board. So there's trend reasons, there's inflation reasons. The line is just too high, the wise guys think, and there's some matchup reasons.
Listen, I love my True Classic shirts. Ultra comfortable, perfect fitting essentials, It's just a great gift for guys this holiday season. They have premium products at an affordable price, and their shirts define your best features with a nice fit, snug in the arms and chest, just the right amount of room in the midsection. They have a 100% perfect fit guarantee and very, very easy returns. So if you're into working out, I like to, True Classic, also have the active wear, moisture wicking, quick dry, odor control. The holidays are here. True Classics, ultra comfortable, perfect fitting essentials make a great gift for you and the men in your life. So if you're ready to upgrade your closet, shop now, unlock big savings, huge holiday sale. Just go to my exclusive link, trueclassic.com/Colin to save. trueclassic.com/Colin. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. End the year with holiday cheer, thanks to True Classic. Packers-Seahawks is a really interesting game. Packers, like the Eagles, have taken passing attempts away from Jordan Love in the last month. They're now a power run team that makes far fewer mistakes. But Green Bay is like a younger version of Philadelphia. They have just decided we're a power run team. We do have weapons over the top, but we're not going to let our quarterback throw more than like 22 to 24 times, and we're going to reduce the errors. And when Green Bay does reduce the errors, they're a really, really good football team. I like Seattle. I still don't think they're an elite team. I think they're a playoff team, maybe in a okay division. I think Green Bay is absolutely a playoff team in an excellent division. I like Green Bay -2.5 sharper.
100% sharp at 2.5. If it gets to 3, it's a pass. And if it gets to 3, the wise guys will probably want to bet on Seattle. But at 2.5, it's 100% the Packers for the reasons you just stated. And the most important thing, it's like playing SEC in the MAC, right? The Packers are losing really close games and winning really close games in the best division in football. They are battle tested every single week.
Yes.
The Seahawks, they're winning a fluky game against the Cardinals a few weeks ago. Then they're getting the Cardinals in a classic Kyler Murray game last week. And they won a miraculous game against the Jets, which they should have lost, but they got Leonard Williams running a pick six back for, 90-something yards. So they're a much better team since the bye, and credit to their coaching staff and everything they've done. And they've improved their defense significantly and their offense, by the way. Zach Charbonnet and what he did last week was a great match for how they want to build their running scheme. But the wise guys like the Packers here. It's just it's a better team. And by the way, Matt LaFleur is a wizard when it comes to covering the spread. It's very possible in 15 years, if Matt LaFleur is still coaching the Packers, he's got Mike Tomlin-like stats as a favorite and as an underdog covering the spread.
Okay, a game I want you to tell me where to go is Bears +6.5 at the Vikings. So Minnesota's a really good team, but that game with Atlanta was tied going into the fourth quarter. I've seen them against teams like the Jags go 0 for 5 in the red zone. It's a good team with a quarterback having a great year. But 6.5 is a lot. It's a divisional game. And the Bears, before that disaster in the Bay Area, which was probably easier to predict than I would have admitted, I do think they'll get back on track. I do think they have a very good roster. This is, again, seems out of whack. 6.5. I mean, I honestly see it as a go either way game in the fourth quarter. Probably take the better coaching staff. But sharper square, Bears plus
so
the
Bear, it's the sharp-ish play, only because, and we talk about this all the time on the show, you want to get the best of the number. 24 hours ago, this game was 7.5, and then it went down to 7, and now it's down to 6.5. That alone tells you, Colin, that you're on the sharp side. If you're betting the Bears, the number has been moving in their direction. The line is way too inflated, and you're getting a very buy low on the Bears, sell high on the Vikings spot. The Bears were a train wreck. They couldn't have looked any worse. They were out of it against the Niners in the first half, right? They had 4 total yards and they had 5 punts, and the Niners had 319 yards. Whereas the Vikings, you're right, that game was tied, and they really blew it open in the fourth quarter because of a couple bad plays and turnovers on the part of the Falcons, not because of anything magical that the Vikings did to run away with it, even though Sam Darnold had an incredible game. but they have had their hiccups. Brian Flores' defense has not been as good in the second half of the year as it was in the first half of the year. So, yes, you're on the sharp side, but it's a caution. Know that if you're playing this number, you've given away some value.
So, I think the Titans getting 4.5 with the Bengals. My prediction is that's the ugly game. I ask you every week for a game that I've missed. My guess is the Titans, a pretty good defensive team at home, playing with pride against the Cincinnati team. You can just move the ball. I mean, if not for a gaffe by the Cowboys special teams, we're going to overtime against a very mediocre Dallas team with Cooper Rush. Is Tennessee plus 4.5 the side here? Is that the game I'm missing?
Well, certainly it's a side. Like it was at 5 and it's come down. So that tells you the wise guys are betting on the Titans because certainly the public isn't going to be betting on the Titans. It's a really tricky game. I haven't touched this game. 100% the value is on the Titans. It's not the game I was going to talk to you about. But the challenge here, you've basically got a one-dimensional Bengals team, right? All they can really do is throw the ball to Higgins and Chase. Joe Burrow, Higgins, Joe Burrow's Chase. That's their game plan. They can't really run the ball. They don't have a screen game. They don't really have play action to speak of. All of those things that could slow down a better than average defense in the Titans, and they have no defense to speak of. The problem is Will Levis, he's not any better than Cooper Rush, right? He's got a better arm. Maybe he can fling it downfield further, but he couldn't even beat up on the Jaguars at home last week, despite so many opportunities. So you're kind of banking on the fact you're hoping that when there's an opening, Will Levis can convert. You're going to take the Titans because if you're a bettor, that's what you do. You bet the number, but know that you're playing with fire here because you're not just betting the number, you're betting Will Levis.
All right, tell me the game I missed.
You didn't talk about Cleveland and Kansas City. This number has dropped from 6.5 to 4.5.
So the Browns
have been the side. The Browns are the side until it gets to about 3.5. And this one, in the betting community, there's two things that are sort of scary right now. It's the frequency and regularity with which you can count on fading Patrick Mahomes when he's a favorite of more than 3, and the frequency and regularity with which you can count on betting Mike Tomlin as an underdog. I said, percentage-wise, if something is happening 6 out of 10 times, which is basically what is happening with both of those categories, Tomlin as a dog, Mahomes is a favorite of more than 3, it means that 4 times those bets are going to lose. This year, they haven't been losing at all. And so wise guys know in this spot, the spot is to play Cleveland. But it's a little bit scarier because you keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. A lot of guys, including myself, thought it would happen last week against the Chargers. No J.K. Dobbins, no Ladd McConkey, and it looked like it was going to. And then again, the Chiefs kind of fell apart because they have no protection on the offensive line. So the Browns pressure the quarterback more than the Chargers and are better at it. And meanwhile, the Chiefs now, they're signing guys off the street to play in the defensive backfield. And if you want to talk about a quarterback who could have a good time slinging it against a wonky defensive backfield, let's talk about Jameis. Now, are you potentially going to suffer a pick 6 that could ruin it for you? Sure. But the wise guys are willing to literally make that bet. So they're playing Cleveland.
I know the game's a couple of weeks away, but I think it's really interesting. The Ohio State hosting Tennessee first-round playoff game to me is one of the more fascinating games ever. So you take a warm weather team from Knoxville, and everybody's having to wait for the playoff to start. That means the weather's getting uglier. My wife was in Chicago today, and she's like, it is cold. Yeah. So you take a warm weather SEC team up to a superior roster, I believe, in Ohio State. You get an Ohio State team that's got a little insecurity and lack of identity off a historically bad loss. So they'll play with incredible intensity and focus. Ohio State really is coming with their hair on fire. And now Ohio State's O-line is the weak unit on their roster, and the D-line for the Volunteers is the strength of their roster. The weather could play a factor. Ohio State's greatest asset is their vertical nature on the perimeter. It could be 38 degrees and windy. I looked at the forecast. Now it's 14 days out or 12 days or 10 days. I looked at it about 4 days ago and I'm like, oh, it's going to be 41 degrees and wet. How does the betting community, or have they looked at that game?
Well, right now the number is 7.5. Like, people have been talking about it. I think there's a lot of circumstances still to go. I'm looking in the app right now, not a ton of action on the game at this point. And like, this is so early, you can't really take anything of it. Majority of money and tickets are on Tennessee. I also think a weak spot for Ohio State is their quarterback. Like, he's not sort of an elite passer who can take advantage of the talent they have, the elite talent, top round, first round draft pick talent they have at Ohio State. You and I have talked about Ohio State a lot, and Ryan Day, the AD, came out today and said he supports Ryan Day. He wants Ryan Day to be back as the head coach. Like, I think there's so much tension inside that community right now about not just beating Tennessee, but the having to advance, that his teams have shown up and played tight. In big games, they play tight.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing the early numbers come in on Tennessee, I think it's partly a fade of Ryan Day's ability to have his team play loose and take full advantage of the talent that they have on their roster.
If you're ever injured, check out Morgan and Morgan. It's America's largest injury law firm, and they are there for you. Over 100 offices nationwide. Think about that. More than 1,000 lawyers with over $20 billion, that's a B, $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients. Things happen in life unexpectedly. Submitting an injury claim with Morgan and Morgan is really, really easy. Like, winning in the NFL is hard. We know that quarterbacking in the NFL is hard. Submitting a claim is easy. You're ever injured? Check out Morgan and Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial #law from your cell phone. Morgan and Morgan has a proven track record of fighting for you to get a full and fair compensation if there's an unexpected accident in your life. And I've had a few. Let's talk about Belichick. I saw today an incredibly weak schedule next year. They have Clemson at home and then Syracuse on the road, but it screams 10 wins. They don't have a quarterback. The O-line's a bit of a mess. He's bringing in Mike Lombardi to be like his GM. They're going to use a pro model. I don't think high school recruiting will be I don't even think they're going to fake it. I think it's going to be an 80-20 transfer portal team. I don't even think they're going to fake it, because I don't really think this is a long-term proposition. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if after a year, Belichick moves back to the pro league and his son takes over. I really don't see this as a long-term proposition. I think the administration, the transfer portal, the fluid NIL, the needy donors, clueless administrators, angry lacrosse coach who's not getting attention. I could see Belichick after a year saying, guys, I got 9 wins, 10 wins. I'm back to the NFL. Over under 6.5, I thought was like, and generally I bet unders on future bets. Like this year I took Denver in the over. The last year I took Rams in the over. I think there's about one gem. 3 years ago, I took Minnesota. They became 13-3. So I got those right. I also like Washington, but generally there's about one great over a year. And then I just bet unders. Is the betting community reacting to all? 6.5 seems, in a really, really weak conference, seems weirdly low.
Well, look, we're hours into this. There's no real reaction if we're talking about North Carolina season win totals at 6.5 because of Bill Belichick. I agree with your theory. I agree with your premise. The one thing I would say is I think it's fascinating that he's doing this, and the way he's talking about it as treating it like a professional program and bringing GMs in. He's basically getting the old band back together, right? From the Patriots circa 2005. I think it's fundamentally brilliant because he's going to run it the way he said the other day on McAfee. Like he's going to run it like it's a professional organization, which is what's driving a lot of the college coaches out. So this is a huge advantage
Yeah.
for him. He's managing a salary cap. He's trying to bring in the best possible talent that are free agents within the college football community. Like this is what the guy has been doing for years, and he will be able to do it in a way that at least for a year or two will have the shine of Bill Belichick, greatest coach ever. And there will be so many people who are high profile players who are going to be interested in seeing what that experience is like. Can he Bradyfy anybody? I think it's great. So, as a fun flyer, for sure, I would take over 6.5.
What's really interesting about this transfer portal. Deion Sanders, Brian Kelly, and Lincoln Riley have found this out. You could improve the talent in your roster, but it's very hard to improve chemistry when you're basically hiring
Yeah.
1 year to the pro players. Oregon, what's really interesting, Oregon got away with it, but almost lost to Idaho and Boise State early. Now, and this is a program with excellent high school recruiting and a great staff. But if you go back to the first two games for Oregon, they were awful because they were moving around offensive line pieces. They, just on sheer talent, got away with it. LSU and USC did not. Colorado did not eventually. So the transfer portal, even for the teams that win with it, I mean, Ohio State, Will Howard's not as good as they thought. He was passing against Big 12 teams. What do you know? Big 10 defenses are better. Big 10 stadiums are louder. Big 10 defensive coaching staffs are better. Will Howard looks really ordinary. He didn't at Kansas State. I watched them and thought it was a great pickup. So it's interesting. The transfer portal, Belichick, though, has dealt with pro athletes, and that's essentially like Ole Miss. They just went and bought a pro team. And Lane Kiffin, by the way, that's why it's worked, because he's got pro experience. So my guess is the personnel and coaching will work. I think the personality fit. He's kind of a terse Northeast confrontational guy. And, these colleges, you forget the word woke, they're a little PC, and they're very tribal. People have their territory, and you walk in, it's not just the professors who are tenured. You have decade-old administrators. He does not care about that. He's not going to any volleyball galas. He doesn't care. So I can see that really wearing him and UNC out in 18 months.
So Seth Wickersham, who you've had on your show a lot, brilliant
He's
writer
great.
at ESPN. Has a great story on ESPN.com today with a little bit of insight and inside info on the process and what the NFL was thinking about Belichick. And, he did an amazing story when Belichick didn't get any jobs about it seemed like GMs and owners were kind of dancing on Belichick's grave a little bit, and the fact that he didn't get any offers, and the Falcons saying he wasn't even in their top 3 of candidates at the end of the day after the interview process. So to me, excuse me, this feels like, and he pointed out, Belichick has a reverence for teaching. And, the book that David Halberstam wrote about Belichick, and Seth wrote all about this, I'm just cribbing from his story, was called The Education of a Coach. His dad was essentially his professor, right? And so I do think there is something for Belichick about going to college and being able to shape people from the beginning. Remember, he was drafting guys that he could turn into Super Bowl champions. The Chuck Noll way was draft guys who you can mold, who can turn into the players you want them to be, who don't have bad habits, right? I wrote a whole book about this, about the Steelers and the Cowboys rivalry, and Chuck Noll was brilliant at this. So Belichick going to college, even if he's getting guys from a transfer portal, if you're going to play for Belichick, you want a certain style of coaching, and you want to know what it takes to get the NFL, you are going to be listening to what Bill Belichick and whoever he puts on staff with him will be saying. You will be moldable. You will be coachable. And I think if you're North Carolina, you know what you're getting, and you're staying out of the way. And if it's a year, if it's 2 years, whatever it is, You're not going to get gruff from tenured professors. You're not going to get gruff from people who don't care about football and are annoyed at the attention he's getting. You know what you're getting with Bill Belichick, and you're going to suck it up and accept it. And he's going to bring you victories and shine to your football program until he decides to go back to the NFL and get Don Shula's record.
By the way, before we go, there's been a lot of UAP and UFO sightings in New Jersey. So I don't believe in UFOs. What I do believe is that our government lies to us, often to protect us from adversaries or to suppress information, to hide technology. They did this with a stealth for years. So I basically think these are super drones that we're experimenting with, our government is experimenting with, and they put them in a location with a lot of media by the water, and to see the reaction from people and see how they look, how people react. They're super drones, drones that our government's been working on, and they probably 150 miles offshore, probably release them. One of our, giant jets goes out there, government jets, and releases 10 into the sky. And they play around for a while, and then they go back offshore. That's my guess on what it is. If you had to guess, is the world ending, or is it some international or government program?
Dude, there's a lot to unpack there. And believe it or not, I have so many theories on this. I think about this so much. Number one, I am essentially a P-doomer. I do believe that there is a point in the not too distant future, 100 years, 200 years, I don't know, in which the world will come to an end because of some catastrophic, whether it's technological, environmental moment, right? Number one. Number two, I also agree the government oftentimes will be screwing around with us in some kind of program.
Yeah.
I'm not like a, deep government, dark government conspiracy theorist. I don't believe there are people who are actively trying to manipulate outcomes and all those kinds of things. I 100% believe there is alien life and there is intelligent life that is working at a higher capacity with more intellectual capacity than humans. And for all we know, they could already be here. Could be sharks, right? How arrogant do you have to be to not think that there could be somebody higher on the intellectual food chain than us? We have explored so little of the galaxies to understand what intelligent life is. And Carl Sagan is one of the most brilliant people who ever lived. He believed that there would be some form of intelligent life and that there is some form of intelligent life outside of known humanity. If he believes it, I believe it.
But how do we know they're smarter? I think there's something out there, but how do we know they don't have the IQ equivalency of like the Jersey Shore cast?
Well, number one, don't discount those Jersey Shore folks because they have made a killing. Like they have really figured out how to be bankable. Number one. Number two, we don't know that. But then you have to ask the other question: how do we know they're not smarter? And by the way,
I think it's a better story that they're super geniuses. I think it's a better story.
Well, it also could be true. Like we want to believe, like that. You're right. The narrative, the science fiction of it all is that they're out there, they're smarter, they're going to come to Earth, they will attack us, they will destroy us, they will use us as puppets, all the Independence Day philosophies, all that kind of stuff. Here's what I'm saying to you. Are they here already? That's the question. Why are we so arrogant as to believe that they're not already here? How do we know they're not sharks?
Well, I don't think it's arrogant. I think if we saw them or we had things that led us to believe they were here, that we would believe it. But I think there are so many there's so many grifters on the internet that are bored out of their mind, and there's been so many obviously inauthentic or fake UFO videos that most people are appropriately cynical.
Sure.
I think I'm appropriately cynical. There are more videos now than ever. I have seen some in the last 2 or 3 weeks. There was the Pentagon video, the TikTok-based Tic Tac, basically over the Pacific, which is, it's hard to explain. And those were really genuinely perplexed fighter pilots, and they're up in the sky. So that stuff's, that's obviously something. It could be China. And this stuff in New Jersey. I mean, you can tell when somebody's faking it, and you can tell when it's a husband and a wife having a margarita, and they're like, "What the F is that?" And they're just laughing. You can tell when it's real and when it's posers. But I tend to go back to, I think it's a government plane, 150 miles offshore, releasing super drones and just looking for the reaction. How visible? How does our government track them? I think our government does a lot of testing. Our military does testing. The Pentagon does testing, and they just don't tell us.
But I agree. It could be super drones and things like that. I don't think it's because they're trying to test for a reaction. I think they're probably trying to test for whatever militaristic use there is for something like this and how they can be deployed. That is separate from, there is some kind of alien life probably living among us right now. I believe it. And if it's not here yet, it's out there somewhere, and it could be more intelligent than us. Might not be. I don't mind listening to your theory and subscribing to that either. But I'm telling you, we're not alone, Colin. We're just not alone. And I'm okay with it. I'm totally okay with it.
I'm too.
There's plenty of room. I don't subscribe to the theory that they have to be after us and they want to be controlling us. We can all peacefully coexist. I love love. Why can't we all just get along?
Listen, there's a man that has died 3 separate times and come back to life. He's all over the internet, and he goes against the grain and says there is no hell. I've experienced it 3 times. What you do is go through the moments of your life and your bad interactions and when you were rude and when you were mean, and that is the hell. That you have to revisit those situations when you were unkind and unwelcoming. There is no fiery pit. It's a series of confrontations, looking back at yourself and the moments you misstepped, and that is punishment. And it's painful. And I hear that, and I think, now that seems much more realistic to somebody who's died, been unconscious 3 different times, and come back to life. So one of the things I've always thought about, if there is life beyond us, I think they would enter and house themselves in the water, because it's the one part of this planet. First of all, it's the largest part. It's the most unexplored part. There's not as many telescopes facing down as up. And it is basically uninhabited. It's easier to hide, and you can travel very well, submarines everywhere. So I always thought if there was another society, that's where you'd hide. And so when I see videos, they're often near the water. You see them so often on coastlines and Virginias and New Jerseys and Californias and Mexico. And it's like, what's the theme? You don't see them in Ottawa. You see them near water. You don't see them you really don't. You don't see them in Kansas very much. So that leads me to believe there is some water connection.
I got 2 things to say to you. Number 1, that guy on the internet who's talking about hell, died 3 times, 100% an alien. Number 2, I'm telling you, underwater, I agree, it's the sharks. I'm just saying, the sharks, they could just be alien life forms.
I'm going to have to sleep on that one.
Okay. Get back to me.
Sharper square, Chad Millman. Good seeing you, buddy.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you later.
I judge the quality of a fragrance by the compliments you get. When I wore Ovation for the first time, second time, and third time, usually I walk past somebody and they're like, "Hey, What you got on? Who over there smelling good? Yeah, you know, that's the injection of confidence right there to you.
That's right. We want to be at the forefront of using the brand as a gateway for these young athletes. Custom suit, we do a photo shoot, we do a video, and it's all about that partnership to create a personal brand.
And I love you guys associating it with more sophistication. Throwing a suit on a kid, sometimes it takes for you to see yourself with a suit on in the mirror to be like, hey, I have more to offer.
Ovation for Men, we're part of Amazon's Black Business Accelerator. You know, Amazon has invested $150 million for the next 4 years to uplift small businesses like myself to scale. You know, Amazon is really putting their money where their mouth is.
They're committed to excellence on every level. They want to scale these businesses to be amongst the best in whatever industry they're in.
You've always been authentic. You've always been pushing excellence.
Well, I appreciate that.
As our slogan says, every man deserves an ovation.
Yes, sir.
Listen, this relationship with Ovation for Men, Richard Sherman, the volume, this is just the beginning.
I appreciate you guys letting me be a part of your journey. If you haven't already checked him out, go out there, get your man some. And get the sport too. And it can be Christmas, birthday, holidays, or yesterday. But make sure you get it.